I have cancer, and nobody knows, she whispered, her voice breaking. Tears rolled down her cheeks, smearing the flawless makeup she always wore in public. The heiress, known across Manhattan society for her elegance and poise, sat slumped on a velvet sofa in her penthouse. The city lights glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but tonight they offered no comfort, only a stark reminder of the world outside, where life went on as usual while she battled a secret no one could see. The apartment, filled with luxury beyond imagination, felt suffocating. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and expensive artwork surrounded her, yet they could not shield her from the fear that gnawed at her insides. She clutched a silk pillow to her chest, as if it could hold together the pieces of her breaking world. Every breath felt heavy, each sob racking her body. She had tried to keep it together in public, smiling for the cameras, attending gala events, and pretending that everything was perfect. But alone, in the silence of her massive penthouse, the truth came crashing down. Unbeknownst to her, a presence lingered nearby. Marcus, the night janitor, moved quietly through the halls of the building, pushing his cleaning cart past rows of marble and gold accents. His job was simple: sweep, mop, and maintain the building without disturbing the residents. Yet tonight, something made him pause. He heard faint sobs echoing from one of the suites, soft but unmistakable. His instincts told him to walk past. It wasn't his business, but another part of him, a part that remembered his own moments of helplessness and grief, made him linger. He stopped just outside the penthouse door, listening without making a sound. The heiress's voice, trembling and raw, carried through the hallway. Marcus had never met her personally. To most, she was a symbol of wealth and untouchable privilege. But now, in her vulnerability, she seemed human, fragile and real in a way that the world rarely allowed her to be. The heiress wiped her tears, trying to regain her composure. She pulled herself upright and glanced at the panoramic view of the skyline. Skyscrapers shimmered like distant stars, oblivious to her struggle. In that moment, she felt both immense loneliness and a strange sense of exposure, as if the walls around her could no longer protect her from the reality of her illness. Marcus stood silently, unsure whether to knock or leave, torn between respecting privacy and offering help. He had no idea what to say, no solution to her pain. Yet the simple act of listening, of being present without judgment, felt like the first step towards something meaningful. Inside, the heiress sensed a shift in the room, though she did not yet see him. The city was vast, her life seemingly perfect, but in that quiet moment, a silent witness had entered her world. And sometimes, she thought, the world's greatest comforts could be found in the smallest, most unexpected gestures, someone simply hearing your truth. The janitor, Marcus, hesitated for a moment outside the penthouse door. He had never imagined that his nightly routine would bring him face to face with a moment like this. The soft sobs from inside tugged at something deep within him, a mixture of empathy and instinct that he could not ignore. His life had been ordinary, defined by long nights and quiet work, often invisible to those around him. But tonight, he felt a strange, urgent pull, an unspoken duty to be present for someone in pain. He knocked gently on the heavy oak door, careful not to startle her. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice almost a whisper, carrying concern without intrusion. The heiress froze, her hands clutching the pillow tighter. She had been alone for hours, letting her fears surface, and the sudden sound of a voice made her heart race. I can't tell anyone," she stammered, her voice shaking. Her eyes darted toward the door, unsure whether to shut him out or allow this intrusion. The penthouse had always been a fortress, shielding her from the outside world, but in that moment, it felt like a prison she couldn't escape. Marcus stepped inside, carefully, keeping his distance. "You don't have to explain everything," he said gently. "Sometimes, just talking helps." There was no judgment in his tone, only quiet understanding. That simple statement, so ordinary yet profound, made her chest tighten. No assistant, no bodyguard, no friend from her glittering social circles had ever said something like that. She wiped her tears, blinking rapidly, unsure how to respond. Why are you here?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Because I heard you," Marcus replied simply. "And, because sometimes, someone has to just listen." There was no agenda, no desire for recognition. His presence was enough, a bridge between two worlds that rarely intersected, the world of unimaginable wealth and the world of ordinary, unnoticed labor. For the first time in days, the heiress felt a flicker of relief. She sank a little deeper into the sofa, still trembling, but slightly less alone. She began to speak, cautiously at first, about the doctor's visits, the exhaustion, the fear of being forgotten. Marcus listened, never interrupting, never offering solutions, only giving her the gift of presence. As she talked, a strange bond began to form. It wasn't friendship in the traditional sense, nor was it a relationship defined by social status. It was something purer, simpler, the human connection that exists when one soul truly sees another, unshielded by wealth or pretension. The city outside continued its relentless pace. Cars honked, lights blinked, and life went on as if nothing had changed. Yet inside the penthouse, time slowed. In the shared silence between words, in the gentle attention Marcus offered, the heiress found a fragile sense of hope. Someone had entered her world, not to judge, not to fix, but simply to be there. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she believed she might not have to face her secret alone. In that quiet, golden-lit room, amidst opulence and isolation, two strangers discovered the extraordinary power of listening. Days passed, and a quiet routine began to form between the heiress and Marcus, the janitor. Each evening, after the building's lights dimmed and the world outside settled into its nighttime rhythm, Marcus would return to the penthouse, not as a servant, not as an intruder, but as a presence she had begun to rely on. He never forced conversation, never asked for explanations, and never crossed the invisible boundaries between their worlds. And yet, simply by being there, he became her anchor in the storm of fear, pain, and isolation. The heiress started to share more. At first, it was small things, the discomfort of treatment, the exhaustion that followed hospital visits, the way her reflection looked different each day. She spoke cautiously, as though testing the waters, afraid that her vulnerability might push him away. But Marcus remained silent in all the right ways, an attentive listener, never judgmental, never intrusive. His nods and quiet reassurances created a space where she felt safe enough to let her guard down. Over time, humor entered their conversations. Marcus, with his easy laugh and simple stories of life outside penthouses and champagne, made her laugh in a way she hadn't in months. She found herself smiling genuinely, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease. The luxury around her seemed less like a cage and more like a backdrop for this unexpected friendship. It was surreal, the way two lives from such different worlds could intersect over something as human as fear and hope. One evening, the heiress shared her most private thoughts, the ones she had never dared voice aloud. The dread of being forgotten, the panic of leaving things unfinished, and the crushing weight of secrecy. Marcus listened, his face calm, steady. He didn't offer platitudes or false reassurances. He simply acknowledged her pain with his presence, letting her know she wasn't alone. In that quiet acknowledgement, she found strength she hadn't realized she still possessed. Through these nightly visits, she began to realize something profound. Strength didn't come from wealth, fame, or social standing. It came from connection, from being truly seen, even in the smallest acts of attention and care. Marcus's kindness was quiet, but it resonated louder than any grand gesture or public display of sympathy could. He reminded her that even in a world obsessed with appearances, compassion still existed, often where it was least expected. As her treatment continued, the heiress faced each day with a renewed sense of courage. The fear remained, it always would, but she no longer felt entirely trapped by it. Marcus had become more than a listener, he was a lifeline, a reminder that someone truly understood, without expectation, without judgment. And the city outside, with its relentless pace and indifferent glow, seemed a little less daunting. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt that survival was not just about enduring, it was about embracing the fragile human connections that made life worth living. In the quiet of the Manhattan night, amidst the silence of her penthouse, an unlikely friendship had blossomed. It was not defined by titles or wealth, but by something far more enduring, the simple, extraordinary power of being heard. One evening, the heiress looked at Marcus with a softness she hadn't shown anyone in months. The penthouse, usually filled with opulence and silence, now held a warmth she could not ignore. "You've changed everything for me," she said quietly, her voice trembling but firm. She didn't need to explain why, he already knew. Marcus simply smiled, a modest, unassuming gesture. "I just listened," he said, shrugging. It wasn't an exaggeration. In the simplest act of attention and empathy, he had given her more than comfort, he had given her hope. The socialite world outside remained oblivious to her struggle. Gala events, charity functions, and paparazzi flashes continued their relentless march, but inside her penthouse, a small revolution had taken place. The walls that had once enclosed her in fear and isolation had been softened by the quiet presence of someone who saw her, not as a wealthy heiress, not as a public figure, but as a human being confronting something terrifying alone. Her treatments continued, grueling and exhausting, but she faced each day with renewed determination. Every hospital visit, every sleepless night, was slightly easier knowing Marcus would be waiting, not with advice or pity, but with patience and understanding. Sometimes they sat together in silence, letting words fall away, letting the presence itself provide comfort. Other times, he would tell simple stories of his life, about his childhood in a small town, the friends he had lost, the dreams he once had. She listened, fascinated, realizing that human connection transcended wealth, class, and circumstance. Over time, the heiress began to understand that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was the ability to face it, even when alone. And she was no longer alone. Marcus's quiet devotion had become a lifeline, an unspoken promise that she could endure, that she could still find joy in small moments, laughter in ordinary stories, and strength in shared vulnerability. One night, after an especially grueling chemotherapy session, she turned to him and said, "I don't think anyone else could understand me like you do." Marcus shook his head gently. "I'm not special," he said. "I just chose to be here. That's all any of us can do." His words, simple as they were, resonated deeply. They were a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism come not from grand gestures, but from presence, empathy, and listening. In the months that followed, her health fluctuated, as it always would. Yet she faced each day differently, less alone, more resilient, and more aware of the beauty of human kindness. She realized that her fortune, while vast, could not protect her from the things that mattered most: fear, loneliness, and the need to be truly seen. Marcus had given her what money could never buy: compassion, understanding, and unwavering support. And in that quiet Manhattan penthouse, high above the indifferent city, an unlikely friendship endured, a testament to the power of human connection. It was a bond that neither wealth nor status could define, but one that would shape the heiress's life forever. Sometimes, salvation came not from doctors, treatments, or fortune, but from the simplest of acts: someone who cared enough to listen, to stay, and to witness a life that had been hidden behind layers of fear. In the end, she learned that no secret, no illness, and no social barrier could overshadow the extraordinary impact of human empathy. And for that, she was eternally grateful.